In a nerve-wracking semi-final, the dream ended for Ben. Now, it's the final.
The single best performance I've ever witnessed.
It's Ray versus Leona.
I am loving every single minute of this.
I'm so excited.
Only your votes will decide who wins the X Factor.
You absolutely nailed it.
And a £1 million recording contract. The X Factor, the final, Saturday at 7, ITV1.
In half an hour here on ITV1 Central, Nick Hancock and Sarah Jane Mee have all the football action in Hancock's half hour after the latest ITV News with Mark Austin.
The day detectives called on Downing Street, Blair's humiliation as he's questioned as part of the Loans for Honours inquiry. It's the first time a serving Prime Minister has been interviewed for a criminal investigation. We reveal tonight he's in the clear, but we understand his chief fundraiser, Lord Levy, is not, and that means the government could still be on the rack. Number 10 is certainly facing one charge tonight about the suspicious timing of the police interview. Were they trying to bury bad news on the day of the Diana report? And on that story, the verdict is a tragic accident, but will this comprehensive review finally put the conspiracy theories to rest?
There was no conspiracy to murder any occupants of that car. This was a tragic accident.
Also tonight, strangled. Police confirm the fourth body recovered was Paula Clennell. The latest live from Suffolk.
In the East Midlands, jailed for 4 years, the man who stabbed a Good Samaritan whilst he was trying to help a woman who was being attacked.
Good evening. When the history is written of the dying days of the Blair government, events in Number 10 today will occupy a few key pages, perhaps with the chapter heading Detectives in Downing Street. Today, for the first time, a serving British Prime Minister was interviewed by police investigating a possible crime. Mr Blair was questioned as part of Scotland Yard's Cash for Peerages inquiry. It was as a witness, not a suspect, but it's humiliating all the same. ITV News learned this evening that he's very unlikely to face prosecution, but that, we understand, cannot yet be said for his chief fundraiser, Lord Levy. It was Downing Street who arranged the interview for today, the very day the Princess Diana crash report was released. Coincidence or an attempt to bury bad news? Let's go straight to our political editor, Tom Bradby, tonight. Tom.
Mark, as you suggested there, history was made in this street today, but in the event that just seems a whole lot less compelling than the way in which this investigation has reached an incredibly dangerous phase for Downing Street. Yes, sure, tonight Tony Blair himself, for the moment, seems off the hook. But let's make no mistake about it. If Lord Levy were to be prosecuted, it would be a catastrophe, not just for him, but for the Labour Party as a whole.
He came to power on a wave of optimism, promising he'd be purer than pure. Tonight, Tony Blair might himself be off the hook. But if you think that is an end to the matter, of its explosive potential, of its capacity to damage, even destroy this man and his government, then forget it. Why? Well, how about this quote from 9 months ago, when questioned on this very issue?
As ever, I've got to... the buck stops with me.
Yes, and for that reason, this can only spread fear through the Blair entourage. Lord Levy is his personal envoy, his close friend. Ominously, he was once alleged to have told his friends he would take others down rather than take the blame for the scandal. He may be entirely innocent, but if a prosecution is brought, the consequences are incalculable. It was the Scottish nationalists who first triggered this investigation.
I'm sure Downing Street spin doctors are saying it's all just a cosy chat with the Prime Minister. I think we should stand back and just realise how unprecedented this is. This is the Prime Minister of this country, interviewed in the course of a criminal investigation, helping the police with their inquiries, in a situation where the only person with the ability to award peerages or knighthoods is the Prime Minister himself.
So how on earth did it come to this? Well, here's our super quick guide to how it started, helpfully titled Gongopoly, a game of money, manoeuvring and power. Here's how the problem started for the Prime Minister. In the run-up to the last election, he desperately needed to raise funds to fight the campaign. Some big donors had given money, but the party was still hard up. The trouble was, big donations sometimes caused controversy. So what did Tony Blair do? He called in Lord Levy, Lord Cashpoint, to his friends. He allegedly came up with a way of making sure that the Labour Party got money, but without any embarrassing publicity. They would be asked to give loans rather than donations, since these could remain secret. And to encourage them to be generous, it is alleged that they were offered peerages, seats in the House of Lords, in return for the cash. The only problem with this alleged plan, it was illegal. The Prime Minister's allies are still convinced this entire investigation is a gross injustice.
I think the people in government at the moment who've been involved in the police inquiry will feel probably regretful they hadn't done things differently, but also feel a bit unlucky that they're being called to account for practices which were absolutely normal and mainstream under the previous Conservative and Labour administrations.
This investigation is headed by John Yates, but it was DS Graham McNulty who conducted the interview today. He's been described as slightly terrifying, and well, he might be given the stakes. The Prime Minister was interviewed for an hour and a half without the presence of a lawyer. Whatever he said, there can be only one question for him tonight, as for every other observer in Westminster. What next? All eyes remain on Scotland Yard.
The questioning of the Prime Minister wasn't the only uncomfortable news the government released today. The Serious Fraud Office said that on government legal advice it was dropping a controversial investigation into a Saudi slush fund. For more on this tonight, here's our political reporter, Chris Shipp.
The deal was for 72 of these Eurofighter jets. It was worth billions to defence firm BAE. Yet Saudi Arabia was threatening to pull the plug. Angered by a British corruption probe, the deal was rapidly going cold. With British jobs on the line, today the investigation was brought to a sudden halt.
That continuation of the investigation would cause serious damage to UK-Saudi security, intelligence and diplomatic cooperation, which is likely to have seriously negative consequences for the United Kingdom public interest.
Not, the Attorney General insisted, as a result of commercial interests, but it left other lords wondering...
doesn't that really amount to blackmail by Saudi Arabia?
So what got the Saudis so upset? The investigation here into claims Britain's biggest defence firm bribed members of the Saudi royal family. BAE Systems has always denied doing anything wrong. The Serious Fraud Office had spent 2 years looking into it. Not anymore.
I think this decision is incredible. The Serious Fraud Office was a long way down the road of a serious investigation, and they've been pulled off by the Minister basically on the grounds of national interest, and there is no national interest.
Britain's defence contract with the Saudis was signed by Margaret Thatcher in 1985. But despite the serious allegations of fraud, today we were told, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, the rule of law has made way for our national interest.
An outrageous decision that the government is just going to stop investigating alleged fraud by Britain's top arms manufacturer in its dealings with Saudi Arabia because it's not in our national interest. This goes to the heart of the credibility of our politics.
Dropping the investigation is an embarrassing climb down for the Prime Minister, coincidentally also announced today. Coincidentally, ahead of his trip to the Middle East. Coincidence. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Westminster.
Back now to our political editor. So, Tom, you think he's been cleared, but just how serious does the Loans for Honours inquiry remain for Tony Blair?
Well, I think it remains incredibly serious indeed, and we've got to make the point for legal and obviously moral and ethical reasons that Lord Levy hasn't been even charged with anything yet, and may well be totally innocent. But as I understand it, what surprised the cops in this case, at some point they were relatively bumbling along, but what surprised them is what has been committed to email and to paper in this case. And as I said at the top, I just don't think we should be in any doubt that were it to get to the point of Lord Levy being prosecuted, it would be a catastrophe for the Labour Party. It would also be uncharted territory. I say Blair's in the clear. He is for now. If Lord Levy ends up taking the rap, who knows what will happen.
And Tom, this dropping of the fraud investigation is also controversial. Has there been an attempt to bury bad news?
Well, Downing Street say, there was absolutely no deliberate nature in the timing, but I understand tonight that it was 100% Downing Street's decision to have that interview today. The interview with Mr. Yates or his team on the day of this Diana report. So, I mean, what can you say? One has to look at it with rampant suspicion. As to the Saudi deal, I mean, I think this whole business of the SFO inquiry into BAE and the Saudi deal is really going to reverberate as well, like the honours scandal, for months and months. I mean, what are we really saying tonight? Are we saying that the British law doesn't or might not apply when it comes to dealings with the Saudis? I mean, I think everyone around here is just saying, well, where does this leave us? What does this mean? I think the implications, as you heard there, are quite extraordinary. So I think we've had we talk a lot about historic days here, but I think this has been a really important day, and I suspect in both cases we'll still be talking about it in a long time, and certainly in the latter, in the Saudi issue, I think it's an issue we'll be discussing for many, many months to come.
All right, Tom Bradby, thank you very much indeed. Now, still to come tonight.
And Panesar's got... Catch it. That's an edge.
High fives for Monty as a famous five puts the Aussies in a spin down under. But first, her death launched 1,000 conspiracy theories. Today, the report that was supposed to end them was published, but with the inquest into Princess Diana's death due in the new year, that seems a forlorn hope. Lord Stevens' report was clear there was no conspiracy. The Paris Ritz driver, Henri Paul, had drunk enough to put him twice over the British drink-drive limit, and he was speeding. It said Diana was neither pregnant nor engaged. Our senior correspondent James Mates reports on a tragic accident.
She died in the prime of her life, the best known, perhaps the most popular woman on earth. So it's no surprise that many have been reluctant to accept her death could have been a simple, dreadful accident. But that is the conclusion of exhaustive investigations by the French and now the British police. No conspiracy, no secret agents, no cover-up, but a car crash caused by a man drinking too much and driving too fast.
There was no conspiracy to murder any occupants of that car. This was a tragic accident.
Lord Stevens could find no motive for the British establishment to want Diana dead. She was definitely not pregnant. Neither her friends nor Prince William thought for a moment she was about to get engaged to Dodi Al-Fayed. And he said in the confusion of that Paris night, conspirators would have had neither the opportunity nor the capability. The couple's movements that Saturday were so random as to rule that out. They arrived at the Ritz Hotel on the afternoon of Saturday, August the 30th. At 7 p.m. they left for Dodi Al-Fayed's apartment at the Rue Arsène Housset, close to the Arc de Triomphe. There was no intention of ever going back to the Ritz that evening. Later the couple headed for a restaurant near the Rue de Rivoli, but because of the paparazzi they now decided to go back to the Ritz to eat. This is a surprise to the head of security, Henri Paul, who has to rush back to the hotel and then arranges to drive the couple back to Dodi's flat after supper. Mohammed Al-Fayed had placed a decoy car at the front of the hotel. Diana and Dodi, in fact, left from the back shortly after midnight. Lord Stevens concludes that given the unpredictability of their movements, there is no way the security services could have arranged to kill the couple in a crash just 5 minutes later in the Place d'Alma underpass near the River Seine. You say this was a tragic accident. Was anyone to blame for this accident?
This is a long chain of events that led to this accident. I make no assumptions of who is to blame. I lay no blame at anyone's door.
But that is not the view of Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, for whom this report changes nothing. He once said he had the greatest respect for Lord Stevens. Now the policeman's become just another part of the establishment cover-up.
I am certain, 100%, that a leading member of the royal family have planned that, and the whole plot being executed in his order with the help of member of MI6.
Millions have been spent, mountains of evidence gathered, but despite it all, still no sign that almost a decade later Diana's memory is to be allowed to rest in peace. James Mates, ITV News at Buckingham Palace.
Well, the Stevens report went further than the French investigation in questioning the behaviour of the paparazzi. As we reported last night, Prince William and Prince Harry were said to be devastated by what it says. Today, one of those trying to photograph Diana that night told ITV News he was sorry for what happened, but knew the princes could never forgive him. Our Europe correspondent Robert Moore spoke to him, and he joins us now. Robert.
Mark, there are simply so many imponderables about what happened here at this underpass that summer night 10 years ago. One of which, of course, is, would the accident have even happened if photographers had not been in hot pursuit of the Mercedes? Certainly tonight, once again, the role of the paparazzi takes centre stage.
Diana was relentlessly pursued by the paparazzi. She was the most photographed woman in the world, sometimes against her wishes. But there's also no doubt she courted media attention. But on that fateful night, did the paparazzi contribute to her death before they were taken away from the crash scene by police?
In the mind of the people, we will always be responsible for what happened.
Pierre Sue was at the Ritz that night, one of the paparazzi chasing the princess. Today he wanted to directly apologise to Princes William and Harry.
We have a very deep respect for the two princes, and we are very sorry, at least I am very sorry for what happened. I know that there will never be any kind of understanding or forgiveness or anything like this. I perfectly do know that, but still, I want to make a point that it's terrible. We feel sorry, we really do feel sorry for the princes.
But has anything really changed? Has the paparazzi moderated its aggressive conduct? Yes, says Pierre Sue. There are new unofficial rules, at least in Paris.
Do not drive recklessly. Do not snap pictures while a vehicle is driving. Do not jump out to take pictures through the windows, at the traffic light. Give a good security distance. And if we have a feeling that the driver is playing cat and mouse with us, in that case, we give up.
Celebrities will say with some justification that such a code of behaviour is never enforced. But it's one of the most tantalising questions of that August night. If the photographers were not chasing Diana and Dodi, might the crash have been avoided? Of course, that's a question that no report can ever answer.
So, Robert, what are the chances that this code of behaviour, as you call it, will stick?
Well, look, I think some of the photographers that night have deep and lingering regrets. They are genuinely remorseful. But remember, Mark, the paparazzi is not a structured group. There are always newcomers and freelancers entering the game, always trying to push the boundaries and the borders, always trying to capture that extra shot. I think the brutal truth is this, that if the celebrity is famous enough, and if the photograph is valuable enough, then a code for honour will count for very little. Could an accident like this happen again? I think many celebrities and many photographers would acknowledge that yes, it could.
All right, Robert, thank you. Robert Moore in Paris there. And our royal correspondent, Romilly Weeks, is outside Buckingham Palace tonight. Romilly, the princes want this report to end the speculation surrounding their mother's death. I suppose the question is, will it?
Well, 9.5 years on, you might think so, but in a word, Mark, no. I'm afraid this is just going to be another stage in the long, drawn-out, picked-over death of the princess. Lord Stevens has spent 3 years investigating this crash, but he's just reporting to the inquest. That's going to reopen next month, and the lady judge who's presiding over it, Lady Butler Sloss, will draw her own conclusions. Mohammed Al Fayed has already said that he's going to spend every penny of his money, if necessary, in order to fight to prove that the royal family, MI6, the whole of the British establishment were responsible for her death, and his lawyers are likely to dispute every point at the inquest. Now, 8 years ago, William and Harry were saying that they hoped that they would be allowed to move on, that the rumours and the speculation would come to an end. The fact that we're still talking about it all these years later must make her friends and her family just want to weep.
Romilly Weeks, thank you. Now, sadly, but perhaps not surprisingly, police said one of the bodies found by the side of a road outside Ipswich was that of the missing prostitute Paula Clennell. They said she'd been strangled like one of the other dead women. Helen Wright is in Ipswich tonight. Helen.
Well, tonight the intensity of this murder inquiry was further highlighted when British Transport Police said they had closed to passenger trains a 1.25 mile stretch of railway line between Ipswich and Felixstowe. The line runs very close to one of the crime scenes, and the closure was to allow Suffolk officers to continue their hunt for clues that they hope will help catch a killer.
There is now no doubt, no last vestige of hope for her family to cling to. Paula Clennell, police confirmed, is one of the last 2 victims of a multiple murderer. A mother of 3 daughters, a woman of 24, who foretold she would die young. Here in a home video, Paula was last seen on Sunday. Detectives also now know she was killed in a similar way to Annalie Alderton, another prostitute whose body was found at the weekend.
We know that Annalie, who was found at Nacton on Sunday, died as a result of asphyxiation, and the first girl recovered from the scene at Levington last night, we're told, died as a result of compression to her neck. So some similarities.
The body of another woman was found just yards from where Paula was discovered. Covered in a red blanket, she has now been moved from the wind-swept scrubland where both women were callously dumped. A post-mortem will now establish how she died, but there can be little doubt this is the body of Annette Nicholls.
At the end of this road, beyond the police cordon and just a few hundred yards from where the women's bodies were dumped, there are 2 lay-bys. Now, they're routinely used by people who live in this area, and police are asking anyone who was here since Sunday and has perhaps seen something they thought was suspicious to get in touch.
Police also need to trace the last movements of all 5 women and to find their clothes. Tanya Nicol and all the women were left naked. Tanya was wearing jeans and pink shoes like these when she went missing. Police described Gemma Adams' clothes.
Gemma, who was last seen on November the 15th, was wearing a black waterproof waist-length jacket with a hood, light blue jeans with studs on the pockets, a red top.
Every night now, police will hand out safety leaflets and offer personal alarms to young women. This is a community preparing for Christmas, knowing a killer is operating in its midst. Helen Wright, ITV News, Ipswich.
So, Helen, it's still at an early stage, but how do the police think the inquiry's going?
Well, an extra 250 police officers have now been drafted in to assist with this rapid and very intensive murder inquiry. That is likely to rise to about 300 in the coming days. And welcome though it is, this inquiry has been inundated with a daunting amount of information. 5,500 calls from members of the public, 1,000 emails, and of course forensic evidence from 5 separate crime scenes and 5 separate victims. The key now, of course, is to find the common link, the common factor between those victims and between that forensic evidence.
All right, Helen, thank you very much indeed for that. Now let's get some more of tonight's news. Former Defence Secretary Geoff Hoon has been called to give evidence at the inquest of a British tank commander killed in Iraq. Sergeant Steve Roberts was killed by friendly fire as he manned a checkpoint in 2003. The coroner wants to ask Mr Hoon why it took 8 weeks to authorise extra body armour to be sent to Iraq. The father of a teenage chess prodigy who fell to her death from a hotel window has been cleared of repeatedly raping her when she was a child. Ian Gilbert denied claims by his daughter Jessica that he forced her to have sex with him when she was 9 years old. Thousands of Britons heading abroad this Christmas face travel chaos after a holiday firm went bust. The company, which traded under the names CT2, HCCT Holiday Limited and Loco Flights, hasn't paid airlines for around 37,000 tickets already booked by travellers. And this year will almost certainly be the warmest on record. Weather experts say provided there's no significant cold spell before the end of the year, 2006 will go down as the hottest year ever here. They also predict 2007 could be even hotter. Monty Panesar had something to prove, and prove it he did. Left out of the first 2 Ashes tests, the England spinner took 5 Australian wickets on day 1 of the 3rd. But after his success, it's now up to the batsmen, and they didn't start that well. Still, it could all change in the next few hours. Let's hope so. Our sports correspondent Geraint Vincent reports.
Caps off. Back by popular demand, England's spinning Sikh finally got the chance to make his mark on this Ashes series in Perth this morning. and he didn't take long about it. He'd bowled just 6 balls before he got the better of Justin Langer.
Just before lunch.
And after the customary understated celebration, Monty Panesar set about bamboozling Australian batsmen all the way down the order.
And Panesar's got it.
On a pitch which usually favours fast bowling, Monty got them out every which way.
That's an edge.
Finishing with record figures of 5 for 92.
Yes, he's given him.
And with somebody else in the spotlight, the man who's supposed to be England's strike bowler suddenly remembered how to take wickets. Steve Harmison trapped Australia's best batsman, Ricky Ponting, LBW for just 2 runs, and his 4 for 48 capped the best English bowling performance so far on this tour. Australia all out for 244. So, could they follow that with a good batting performance? Well, they started well, but just before the close of play, Australia's bowlers struck, leaving England at 51 for 2. England's fans were still doing plenty of cheering, though. There was no question about whose day this was. Panesar. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Football, Dimitar Berbatov's goal-scoring streak continued for Tottenham tonight in their UEFA Cup game against Dinamo Bucharest. His quick thinking gave Spurs the lead. In the 17th minute, he intercepted the goalkeeper's throw to put Spurs ahead. Jermaine Defoe scored 2 more for Tottenham. Final score 3-1. They'll now join Rangers in the last 32 of the UEFA Cup after they beat Partizan Belgrade 1-0 at Ibrox. Alan Hutton scored the goal, his first of the season. And Ronnie O'Sullivan said sorry tonight after walking out of the Maplin UK Championship quarter-final against Stephen Hendry. He admitted frustration with his game had got the better of him when he was trailing 4-1. Snooker officials are now deciding whether he should be punished. Onto the markets. The FTSE finished the day at 6,228, up 35 points. The Dow Jones closed at a new high, 12,416, up 99. Coming up in a few moments, the world's tallest man lends a helping hand, but how exactly did he save the life of this dolphin? That after the news where you are.
Hello, you're watching Central News for the East Midlands. Good evening. A man who was stabbed for being a good Samaritan today saw his attacker jailed for a minimum of 4 years. Ian Montgomery was knifed in the stomach when he came to the aid of a woman who was being attacked. Phil Brewster reports.
It was here on Goosegate in Nottingham that Ian's act of charity nearly cost him his life. The 26-year-old was on a night out with friends when he saw a woman knocked to the floor by Luke Poole. Ian went to intervene, only to be stabbed twice by Poole with a blue lock knife, once in the stomach and once in the side. Ian was rushed to Nottingham's Queen's Medical Centre, where he spent 44 days on a ventilator and in a coma. He also underwent 3 life-saving operations, suffered kidney failure and twice nearly died. He's since recovered, but still suffers with breathing problems and hasn't been able to return to work.
The scars I've got every day, I wake up, I'll have a shower. It's a constant reminder, I'm not going to be able to get away with it. But again, support, friends, family that give me, it's made it so much easier. But it's something I will have to, I think, in time it'll become easier. But yeah, I'm reminded of it every day, and that's never going to go away. But
you realise that after what we've been through, that life is on a very, very thin thread. And Ian's life, we nearly lost him twice. And at the end of the day, you realise the importance of the people around you, and it does change you.
The attack on Ian came just 4 days into a government knife amnesty. He and his family are now involved in the campaign Knives Cost Lives, which aims to rid the streets of such weapons. But for now, they say they're just focusing on recovering from the aftermath of a traumatic year. Phil Brewster in Nottingham for Central News.
An illegal immigrant who shot a trainee policewoman in Nottingham has been jailed for 30 years for attempted murder. Trevin Thomas, who's from Trinidad, shot PC Rachel Bown as she investigated a burglary in the Lenton area of the city in February. Thomas will be deported after serving half of his sentence.
Because they've actually abolished capital punishment, doesn't make it right that we should never revisit that debate if the public demand's there, and if that's the punishment that fits the crime. And as we've seen, the sentences that are available to the judiciary at the moment very often don't stop people going out and committing these crimes.
A man has been charged with the murder of a woman whose body was found in a river. Anita Anderson, who was 54, was found in the River Welland between the villages of Crowland and Deeping St James in Lincolnshire on Saturday. Another man who was arrested has been released on police bail. Plans to close down 1 in 6 post offices have been described by critics as high street carnage. But the government says the shake-ups needed for the long-term future of the service. Peter Bean looks at one village post office now facing an uncertain future.
We've got to keep your post office open. Yeah.
There's been a post office at Cookney near Worksop in Nottinghamshire since 1796. But after today's announcement, for how much longer?
It's all down to money, and it shouldn't be down to money, because it should be to communities.
Joyce Potts has been postmistress here for 30 years, working out of what's effectively the front room of her cottage. To her customers, especially the pensioners, she's a lifeline. But is this the face of a modern, competitive postal service? With massive losses and fewer customers, the government says the post office network has to change. Post offices like this are losing money because of the amount of business that's been taken away from them. Things like pension money and child benefits are now paid directly into people's bank accounts. And these days, if you want a new driving licence or a TV licence or a new passport, you either have to go to a larger post office or apply online. Against this background, the government today announced the closure of 2,500 post offices, but insisted rural areas wouldn't suffer. What would it mean to you to lose it?
I can't think of it.
Peter Bean in Cookney for Central News.
Well, it's time now for a look at the weather forecast with Emma Jesson.
Weekend. In just a moment. As far as tonight's concerned, the temperature's on the slide, but still around about the average. Not too bad there. Lots of cloud cover, thicker cloud to the north and the northwest, giving 1 or 2 bits and pieces of patchy light rain. Quite windy out there. The rain dropping southwards as we head into tomorrow, and it will become quite persistent in 1 or 2 spots. Now, the big change is really going to be this slide in temperatures tomorrow, down to 8 to 10 Celsius at best, as opposed to today's 13s in places. A good few degrees down, and then high pressure taking over for weekend. Fine and bright. The odd shower slipping through the net on Monday, but really nothing to spoil the picture. Bye-bye.
Central Weather with the new BMIBaby.com credit card.
Well, that's it from us. Central News is back tomorrow morning within GMTV. And don't forget Central Tonight at 6 p.m. every weekday evening. But first, it's back to the ITV News studios in London to rejoin Mark Austin. From the Late team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.
Hello again. Our headlines tonight. Tony Blair has been questioned over the Cash for Honours inquiry, but ITV News has learned he's unlikely to face prosecution. The official inquiry into the crash that killed Princess Diana has concluded it was a tragic accident. It denied there was a conspiracy. And police hunting the killer of 5 prostitutes in Suffolk have identified the 4th victim as Paula Clennell. She was strangled. And what do tomorrow's papers make of those stories? The Telegraph reports on that police questioning of Tony Blair. It says Downing Street stands accused of arranging it on the day of the Diana crash report in an attempt to bury the bad news. The Guardian leads on the halting of the fraud investigation into claims of a slush fund to win contracts from Saudi Arabia. It says the Cabinet agreed the wider public interest outweighed the need to maintain the rule of law. The Independent publishes what it claims is a diplomat's report suppressed by the government, which reveals the truth about the case for war. It says the UK opposed regime change as it would mean Iraq collapsing into chaos. And The Express criticises the report into the death of Princess Diana and says it offered a nation desperate for the truth a whitewash. Now, just before we go, a sad story with a happy and unusual ending. 2 dolphins in an aquarium in China were slowly dying because they'd swallowed large pieces of plastic. Their keepers tried sticking surgical instruments down their throats but couldn't grip the plastic. Then came the bright idea, step forward, the world's tallest man, a 7-foot 9-inch herdsman from the nearby Chinese region of Inner Mongolia. With his 3-foot long arms, he could reach down into the dolphin's stomachs and pull out the offending plastic. You couldn't make it up. There we are. That was tonight's news. So from me and from everyone here, good night and thank you for watching.
Your boy Fetch.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.
Hello again, good evening. It's been a very wet picture across northwestern parts of the UK through today, but thankfully that rain is now slipping southwards. Still a few heavy bursts in there as well. And further south generally, the further south and southeast you go, the drier things are going to be. But here we are going to see a few little bits of rain in places and a very mild night for you as well. Temperatures staying into double figures. Looking ahead to tomorrow, that rain band's still with us in this sort of position, and once again a few heavy bursts in places, particularly across the west. Now further north, an awful lot different for you because we're going to see drier, brighter and colder conditions generally. This westerly wind becoming established, and this air has originated from Greenland, so very cold indeed. Now that westerly air flows with us throughout the weekend, so much colder, brighter and a few showers in places. Good night.
Parky, innit?
Positive energy from Powergen.